So, Mira, are you surprised that London took this hard line, or was the writing on the wall?
They've been hinting at it for quite a while. They issued a probationary 2-month license, which had a series of safety concerns that they outlined that they needed addressed. So it wasn't, I think, a surprise particularly. And I think what's important to underscore for the public is that it doesn't really change day-to-day operations. So Uber will continue to operate. They can continue to bring on new drivers. There's a magistrate's process, which takes quite a bit of time.
So Uber had been accused and admitted to basically allowing drivers who weren't allowed on the platform to drive by uploading their photos to somebody else's profile. At least 14,000 trips were taken this way, where the riders were uninsured, in danger. I take it this is something that doesn't just happen in London. Presumably it's happening in the U.S. as well. Did you see this happening when you were watching this closely? Maybe you still are. And is anyone in the U.S. policing it?
It's certainly happening worldwide. Beijing, there was, I believe it was Ola or Didi, had an incredible problem with illegal drivers joining their platform under pretext. So it's certainly a problem that's in the apps doing business in all major cities. In New York City, we required that these companies provide us with data on the exact driver and the exact vehicle, and they are required to sync up with active drivers and active vehicles 3 times a day so that you're caught out when you're sending out unauthorized drivers and vehicles. So it allows the city to police this a lot more closely. No method is perfect around this. It's a systemic problem, but it's certainly a lot closer attention. But in other major cities, it is alive and well. Lots of times, either drivers give out their credentials, other people take their credentials. There's not a lot of checks and balances on the identity of the driver and whether it's the one that was actually authorized to drive by the regulator or by the company.
Mira, I was just going to basically ask you that very question, which is, I know you do focus on and communicate with quite a number of different cities and regulators in those cities around ride sharing. Do you expect, is this something that is going to be adopted? For example, the rules, the policies that New York City has in place, do you expect to see that adopted in more places? Is it being adopted in more places?
Well, it's certainly probably a push for it in places that are collecting data like New York City, and for cities that are considering collecting data, it provides them with a pretty good method of how to check driver identity and make sure that there's more validation going on. What I think I find a little troubling about the London situation is Uber's proposing biometrics, facial recognition as a means of validating drivers. Now, I think drivers may not enjoy that. I think that's putting it mildly. And second, it's a voluntary thing. So one company's doing it, but they could stop doing it at any time. And there's a risk to Uber. It puts them at a competitive disadvantage. Other companies that aren't employing facial recognition may be more attractive to work for. So I always advocate for a regulator-centered approach that's consistent and uniform and applies to every company.
Mira, how many costs do you think there are for companies like Uber to get up to a reasonable standard that maybe investors are not considering? Already, stocks like Uber and Lyft, well, specifically Uber and Lyft, are under pressure on the expectation that they're going to have to make money eventually, and so their costs that they're going to charge are going to go up. That's going to affect demand. But it seems at the same time, there are things like this that the companies are going to have to deal with, and investors maybe aren't sure how to factor that in.
Yeah, well, I would guess, and hopefully it's not a completely irrational guess, that something like employing facial recognition, and then that's not enough. You have to make sure that it's working and that it's catching instances when people are trying to get around it. Is not a minor endeavor, and once you offer it in one city, there's going to be pressure that it be offered in others. Combine that with probably likely litigation by drivers groups who will be opposed to that. Those costs will certainly add up. So if that's the approach that they take, I do think that that will be a costly one. And a lot of times they're taking that approach because the alternative, which is sharing regular data with a regulator is something they want to avoid at all costs. So they're making a decision about where they want to spend money, and you'll have to take the long view about whether that's the right one or not.